offensive line coach Sam Pittman a driving force behind Georgia's run to Rose Bowl. Los Angeles, for every team that puts together a special season, there are 1,000 woven threads of good fortune, unsung heroes and critical decisions where their fate could have gone in either direction. We like to tell those stories, to create the tapestry of why a team like Georgia went from an 8-5 disappointment last season to an SEC champion that can reach the college football playoff title game by beating Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl on Monday. And for the Bulldogs, one of those moments had little to do with them at all. If you look at where Georgia is now and where its program is headed, the fingerprints of offensive line coach Sam Pittman are all over it, both in the Bulldogs' massive improvement up front this season and, just as important, for recruiting a quartet of 5-star prospects that should start paying off as soon as next year. It's one of the best decisions I made, head coach Kirby Smart regarding the decision to hire Pittman, which is where the part that has nothing to do with Georgia comes in. When Pittman was part of the coaching staff at Arkansas in 2015, Brett Bielema had gotten non-compete clauses put in the contracts of his assistants that would only allow them to go to another SEC school if they went from position coach to coordinator. But Pittman, as part of Bielema's original staff and one of his best friends, didn't have the clause in his contract, a fact that strained their relationship for a time when Pittman accepted a moderate raise, $525,000 to $650,000. For a job that he felt put him in better position to win a national championship. More, Oklahoma's maligned defense has much to prove, and a chance to do it more. Oklahoma's Baker Mayfield arrives for Media Day, just a little bit late. Woken column, college football's sleeping giant, Georgia, is wide awake. Pittman, kind of always made the comment that, you don't have to worry about me going. You can set the buyout wherever you want it. Bielema said at the time. I just believed it, and obviously it didn't come true. Under those circumstances, it's easy to imagine a world where Pittman couldn't leave for Georgia. The Bulldogs couldn't develop the kind of battering ram style they rode to the SEC title this year while Arkansas kept motoring on as one of the most physical rushing teams in the country. As it was, Pittman's departure seemed to strip the Razorbacks of their identity, ultimately leading to Bielema's firing this year. Instead, it's Georgia reaping the benefits of Pittman, a 57-year-old grinder who worked at 9 different football bowl subdivision schools, including 2 separate stints at Northern Illinois, before finally getting his due as one of the nation's premier offensive line coaches. He's a damn nomad, offensive coordinator Jim Chaney said. But I think every kid in that room knows Sam loves them and cares about them, and the day and age we live in right now that's ultimately important. They'll about run through a wall for that man, and if he asks them to do something, they'll do it. In the old days you did it out of fear, afraid the coach was going to kill you. Now you do it because that man cares about you. And the doing it at Pittman's behest, ultimately, has been the difference for Georgia this season. As much praise has been heaped on its defense, its three-headed monster at running back and the composure of freshman quarterback Jake Fromm, none of this happens for the Bulldogs if they hadn't pulled it together on the offensive line after last season when it received, and deserved, significant criticism for its inconsistent play. A year later and you ask me what's the difference last year to this year, we blocked, Chaney said. Yeah, we've got some talented kids carrying the ball, but at the end of the day, we blocked better. I don't give a rat's butt what play I call. But if you don't beat that guy one-on-one with a block and have the pride enough to do it, I can't be right. While Georgia blocking better has something to do with talent, 3 senior starters last season were replaced and highly regarded freshman Andrew Thomas has played well at right tackle. It's also, by all accounts, a testament to the unique style Pittman teaches where he wants his players to aggressively attack a defensive front. Pittman never played offensive line. He was on the other side of the ball, so he has no orthodoxy in traditional techniques. What he teaches tends to be a little bit outside the norm, and obviously effective. We're going to try to see it before they get there, he said. The most aggressive offensive linemen were the ones that were hard to get off of, so I just thought, if you're teaching these guys to strike with their hands, attack the second step, Why can't you teach near leg, near shoulder as an offensive line coach? And that's where we started, and that's what we try to get done. Though Georgia's players bought in early, it didn't click right away. The Bulldogs ranked just 50th nationally in rushing yards per game, which set them up for a struggle with a freshman quarterback they couldn't protect well enough. His style is definitely different, and that's why I believe that it just took us a while to get comfortable with him, but his style of teaching is definitely unique and is working, tackle Isaiah Wynn said. He gives you a bunch of tools to use. Said running back Nick Chubb, he's definitely a great motivator. He's definitely relaxed and calm at times, but he can also erupt. Those guys, the whole team, they respect him a lot. They do everything he says. Pittman's repertoire as a motivator shows up at times on his Twitter feed, particularly when he lands a big score in recruiting. On December 20th, the Bulldogs class went from very good to a supernova when they landed Jamari Salyer, the nation's #1 offensive guard, and former Tennessee commitment Cade Mays, ranked the #2 offensive tackle, both of which were Pittman's recruits. He showed up on Twitter waving red and black pom-poms in a sport coat, then dropped them and opened the jacket to reveal a tight-fitting Georgia jersey while yelling yes sir. Jamari and Cade kind of came up with what they wanted me to do when they committed, so I said, "Hey, you sign that paper, I'll do whatever you want me to," Pittman said. Them jerseys were a little tight, but other than that it was a fun deal. The social media presence may be required nowadays, but Smart calls Pittman old school, pointing out little things like handwriting letters to recruits and, of course, trying to knock a defensive line off the ball. Though they barely knew each other before Smart got the job at Georgia, he pretty quickly identified Pittman as someone he'd like to hire for a position of extreme importance given the style of play he wanted to implement. I always remember he'd come up to me after the games when we'd play Arkansas and he'd give our team and players a lot of respect, and I had a lot of respect for the way his O-lines played, Smart said. I always judge a coach by two things: how hard do your players play for you and how well do you recruit, and he does both of those tremendously. What's scary for the rest of the SEC is this offensive line at Georgia, the one that helped generate 263 rushing yards per game this season, ranked 10th nationally, is only going to get more better as those recruits start developing. Right now, Chaney says, they're simply getting the most out of a group that wasn't very deep when their staff arrived. We're not super talented, but those guys play their butts off, Chaney said. One thing we do better than most is we block, and I'm proud as hell of that. Pittman agrees that Georgia's offensive line is nowhere close to where we need to be yet, but it's easy to see that he is exactly where he should be. Though he said he's repaired the relationship with Bielema, it was still awful to leave Arkansas and his players at the time. And now not only does he have a chance to win a national title, but he can do it against the team he grew up rooting for in Tiny Grove, Oklahoma. I'll always be an Oklahoma fan, just not every game, he said. And now to think that you're going to be out there and all the little kids are going to be watching the game like I used to. Nobody's coming out here to see me, and I understand that, but it's still really cool to be a part of it.